Under the watchful gaze of countless pairs of eyes, Chao Feng stepped forward slowly. With each step, the spiritual energy emanating from his body surged at an incredible speed. In just 3 steps, his spiritual energy had already surpassed the peak of the first grade supreme. The strength of his spiritual energy was far more formidable than any opponent Chen had encountered before on Golden Pool Peak. As the playful smile lingered on Chao Feng's lips, he steadied his pace. His spiritual energy fluctuations stabilized at the level of the second grade supreme, and the immense pressure of his spiritual energy seemed to envelop the entire Great Luo Gold Terrace. Chao Feng had already ascended to the second grade supreme. Once again, a wave of astonished exclamations rose from the crowd beneath Golden Pool Peak. No wonder Chao Feng had shown no fear when facing Chen's challenge. He had long since broken through and successfully entered the second grade supreme. Tang Bing and Tang Rou, the 2 sisters, could not help but slightly change expression. They both knew well that the difference between each grade in the supreme realm was vast, and bridging that gap was no easy feat. "Sister, Chen won't lose, will he?" Tang Rou tugged at Tang Bing's hand, her voice soft. If Chen were to lose, their 9 Nether Palaces' reputation would undoubtedly plummet. At that point, the Blood Eagle King would surely bring up old grievances and try to have them disbanded once and for all. Tang Bing hesitated for a moment before biting her silver teeth and saying, "Chen isn't a fool. He must have anticipated this. If he didn't have a plan, he wouldn't be walking around so confidently." At this moment, aside from trusting Chen, she had no other options. 9 Nether, overhearing their conversation, couldn't help but chuckle. "Little Binger, it seems you finally have some confidence in him." Tang Bing's face flushed slightly as she defended. "I'm thinking of our 9 Nether Palace. And he was so arrogant in front of me earlier. If he loses, I'll show him how to handle it." A faint smile played on 9 Nether's cold and beautiful face as she watched the vast spiritual energy curtain. Her narrow eyes locked onto the 2 opposing figures, and she spoke softly, "Don't worry. Chao Feng won't be able to stop him." Chao Feng stood in the center of the Great Luo Gold Terrace, his gaze slightly looking down at Chen. The strength of the second grade supreme gave him the confidence to do so. Inside the Blood Eagle Hall, he had always kept a low profile. Many matters were handled by Wu Tian, giving him an unassuming presence. However, aside from the Blood Eagle King, few knew that his current strength was not much weaker than Wu Tian's. In fact, he was far more patient than Wu Tian. If it weren't for Chen, he might have continued concealing his strength, waiting until one day he could overturn the 3 people who ranked ahead of him. "I hadn't planned on revealing my full strength." Chao Feng's immense spiritual energy rippled around him, causing the air to tremble and visible ripples to form. He glanced indifferently at Chen and said, "But as the former leader of the 9 Nether Guards, I think it's necessary to test whether you, the new leader, are up to the task." Chen furrowed his brow. He stared at Chao Feng and slowly said, "I hope you never say that again. You no longer have any right to be associated with the 9 Nether Palace." He paused before adding, "And I have one more thing to tell you. You really are a thankless wretch. So this time, I want your hand. Though I think it's a dirty hand. Either way, you owe the 9 Nether Guards an explanation." Chen's calm voice echoed across the Great Luo Gold Terrace, causing the other 5 to freeze in shock. Even Su Qing and Zhou Yu were stunned. They stared at the calm-faced youth before them, struggling to comprehend how such audacious words could come from someone who seemed so mild-mannered. Had he really not noticed that Chao Feng had already ascended to the second grade supreme? Even though Chen had shown impressive combat skills earlier, in the face of a second grade supreme, he surely had no right to speak so boldly. "Heh, this is truly interesting," Wu Tian said with an odd look in his eyes, unable to suppress a weird laugh. Chao Feng's gaze was as cold as ice as he stared at Chen. The indifferent expression that had once been on his face had completely disappeared, replaced by a slight twitch at the corner of his mouth, his features gradually contorting into a sinister snarl. "Heh!" A chilling laugh escaped through the gaps in Chao Feng's clenched teeth. Chen's words had clearly infuriated him, causing him to break out into a mocking smile. It had been years since he had encountered someone so audacious. At first, he had only intended to humiliate Chen with words, but he hadn't expected the latter's retort to be even more shocking. It was as though Mu Chen didn't view him as any threat at all. Seems like the new leader Lord Nine Nether brought back is quite the disappointment, Chao Feng said coldly. Mu Chen's brows furrowed further as he fixed his gaze on Chao Feng. 2 hands. You're asking for death. Chao Feng could no longer hold back. His face twisted with fury as he let out a menacing laugh, before suddenly launching himself forward. He intended to cripple the young brat before him, and then see if he dared to speak such foolish words again. Whoosh! Chao Feng's strike was like a ghost, appearing directly in front of Mu Chen with terrifying speed. Without hesitation, he threw a punch, sending a massive surge of spiritual energy crashing forward like a tidal wave, enveloping Mu Chen with overwhelming force. The power of a second-grade supreme erupted in that punch. It was a blow capable of defeating any first-grade supreme opponent. The furious punch, carrying the force of a sea of spiritual energy, roared toward Mu Chen, shaking the gold terrace beneath them. Clearly, Chao Feng held nothing back. The punch expanded rapidly in Mu Chen's black eyes, but there was no sign of retreat. He held his hands out as if to embrace the incoming strike, his eyes suddenly turning crimson, and a terrifying, murderous aura surged outward. Boom! The great Xun'er demon pillar appeared between Mu Chen's arms. He swung it fiercely, meeting the violent punch head-on. Bang! The clash sent a deep, resonating sound echoing through the air. Visible shockwaves radiated out in all directions, causing even the gold terrace to crack with fine fractures. The impact was so powerful that Su Qing and Zhou Yu squinted in response. Boom! In the midst of the spiritual energy chaos, the two figures were violently thrown back. The great Xun'er demon pillar spun in Mu Chen's hands before he slammed it forcefully into the ground. With one hand bracing the pillar, he forced his body to steady, then lifted his head to meet the darkened expression of Chao Feng. A second-grade supreme? Is that all? Mu Chen said calmly. Although he was only a first-grade supreme, his spiritual energy, merged with undying fire, was naturally superior to Chao Feng's. Combined with the strength of the great Xun'er demon pillar, even in a direct confrontation, he was far from at a disadvantage. Now you're saying this? Aren't you afraid you'll lose face when you have to eat your words later? Chao Feng sneered, his gaze growing colder. He clenched his palm tightly, and a surge of spiritual light erupted. A dark red long spear appeared in his hand, its body resembling blood, as if drenched in endless crimson, exuding a chilling aura. At the tip of the spear, there was a blood-red eagle eye, giving it an eerie, unnatural appearance. That's the Blood Eagle Spear from the Blood Eagle Hall. It's an intermediate divine artifact, one of the Blood Eagle Hall's most treasured weapons. The Blood Eagle King really went all out, even giving this divine artifact to Chao Feng. Tang Bing remarked with a tightened heart as she saw the red spear. Tang Rou beside her was also filled with worry and anxiety. With the Blood Eagle Spear in hand, Chao Feng's aura grew increasingly menacing. He shook the spear, and immediately, the shrill cry of an eagle echoed through the heavens. Bloodlight surged, as if it were going to tear the sky apart. Whoosh! Chao Feng shot forward, his form splitting into countless afterimages. The spear's shadow transformed into a blood-red storm, pouring down on Mu Chen like a torrential rain, carrying with it an oppressive killing intent. Mu Chen took a half-step back, swinging the great Xun'er demon pillar with a powerful roar. The massive pillar swept across the battlefield, intercepting the torrential spear strikes one after another. Clang, clang, clang. The two weapons collided with lightning speed, sending sparks flying with each clash. Every impact unleashed an explosive surge of spiritual energy, warping the surrounding space. Neither of them chose to defend. Instead, they both attacked relentlessly, their battle a true test of offensive power. Countless people stared wide-eyed at the two blurry figures. Around them, there was an unmistakable, open space, and no matter how ferocious the opponent's attacks were, they could not break through it. Many of them displayed looks of astonishment in their eyes as they realized that despite his superior strength, Chao Feng had not gained the slightest advantage over Mu Chen in this clash. This, of course, did not escape Chao Feng's notice. His gaze grew colder, and with a quick push of his toes, his figure shot into the air. The blood eagle spear in his hand erupted in a blinding flood of crimson light. A sharp, piercing eagle cry echoed through the heavens and earth. Eagle spear, eagle breaks the sky. The bloodlight surged, and a massive blood-red eagle, over 100 feet in size, suddenly burst from the spear. Its wings spread wide, merging with the spear's deadly blade in a lightning-fast motion, swiftly enveloping Mu Chen. Die! Chao Feng's cold shout reverberated across the sky. Mu Chen looked up, his sharp black eyes locking onto the deadly attack. A piercing light gathered in his gaze. Taking a deep breath, he slammed the great Xun'er demon pill into the ground. Ancient, demonic runes slowly began to glow on the surface of the ancient pillar. At that instant, an indescribable killing aura spread through the air, as if an ancient demon was awakening. Countless people's expressions changed drastically. Mu Chen's eyes blazed crimson, and a low, thunderous voice echoed in his heart. Great Xun'er demon pill, demon vanquishing runes. As the low shout reverberated within Mu Chen's mind, scarlet ancient runes erupted across the surface of the great Xun'er demon pill. The runes spread like cracks, making the pillar appear as if it were about to shatter. However, the shattering appearance was accompanied by an overwhelming, destructive aura that surged out of the cracks, making the great Xun'er demon pill seem like an awakening demon god, exuding an unimaginable terror. The great Xun'er demon pill was an ancient weapon, once wielded by countless super-powerful beings in the far-off past. Though it had been damaged, its power had been steadily recovering alongside Mu Chen's growing strength. Its terrifying might was far beyond that of ordinary artifacts. Boom! With a tremendous surge of murderous energy, the great Xun'er demon pill swung down, twisting the space around it. The very air exploded as it collided head-on with the charging blood-red eagle in a cataclysmic clash. Boom! A deafening, low rumble sounded as the two forces collided, sending shockwaves of spiritual energy bursting outward in all directions like a raging tidal wave. Boom, boom, boom. The violent shockwaves continued to ripple, accompanied by a thunderous roar, as if endless thunderbolts were striking from the heavens. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the place where the spiritual energy shockwaves were most intense. There, a tall and slender figure stood like a spear. Mu Chen, his arms holding the great Xun'er demon pill, was slowly retreating, his feet dragging along the ground, causing the very earth beneath him to shatter into dust with each step. Mu Chen's crimson gaze flickered, and a low growl reverberated from his throat. With a sudden stomp, the golden ground beneath him within a radius of several dozen feet exploded, sending fragments flying in all directions. Break! His arms bulged with veins as thick as dragons, and with a loud roar, the demonic energy on the great Xun'er demon pill surged violently. Screech! A piercing eagle cry rang out as the massive blood-red eagle suddenly cracked open, with fine fissures spreading quickly across its body. In an instant, it exploded into countless crimson sparks, slowly falling from the sky. Above, a muffled sound followed, as a figure stumbled within the chaotic spiritual shockwaves. Mu Chen had forcefully broken through Chao Feng's assault, but clearly, the backlash had affected him as well. Swish! Mu Chen's expression was icy. He stomped the ground and soared into the sky, spreading his arms like a giant rock. The great Xun'er demon pill, now shrouded in shadow, came crashing down on the turbulent spiritual energy that had been unleashed. Mu Chen's attack was extraordinarily fierce. Having gained even the slightest advantage, he would give his opponent no opportunity to breathe. The great Xun'er demon pill ruthlessly tore through the raging spiritual energy, heading straight for the figure at the center of it all. The great Xun'er demon pillar surged into the swirling spiritual energy, and Mu Chen's gaze instantly sharpened. A violent explosion erupted as the surrounding spiritual energy was scattered, and countless gazes turned toward the source. Their pupils contracted sharply. In the place where the spiritual light spread, a massive figure, hundreds of meters tall, stood proudly. This figure was blood-red all over, as though it had been solidified from fresh blood. On its enormous body, strange blood-colored runes were etched, and waves of terrifying spiritual energy emanated from it, causing the entire space to tremble and distort. At that moment, the enormous figure, its hands bathed in bloodlight, reached out and blocked the crashing great Xun'er demon pillar. The blood seemed to flow continuously from its body as the light surged. This towering figure was none other than the supreme Dharma body cultivated by Chao Feng. This supreme Dharma body. Mu Chen's eyes fixed on the blood-red figure. From it, he sensed an overwhelming wave of spiritual energy. His gaze flickered, and he murmured, "It's actually the Blood Shadow Dharma body ranked 99th. Though the Blood Shadow Dharma body was ranked 99th, it was still on the list, meaning it was far stronger than a typical Supreme Dharma body. It seemed that Chao Feng was highly valued in the Bloodhawk Hall. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gained access to the cultivation method for the Blood Shadow Dharma body. No wonder he betrayed 9 Nether Palace and joined the Bloodhawk Hall. You forced me to use the Blood Shadow Dharma body. I'll admit, you've got some skill." The Blood Shadow Dharma body, now controlled by Chao Feng, glared at Mu Chen with savage, bloodshot eyes. His voice, cold and full of fury, echoed in the air. There was a hint of intense rage in his words. Initially, Chao Feng had thought that with his second-grade supreme strength, he could easily crush Mu Chen. However, after the battle started, he realized he couldn't gain the upper hand. In fact, he was slightly suppressed by the strange demonic pillar, which was full of ominous killing intent. How could he tolerate such humiliation? Now, with everyone in the Great Luo Heavenly Domain watching, if he lost to Mu Chen, his future would be grim. He had no choice but to eliminate Mu Chen at all costs. A wave of killing intent flashed in the blood-red eyes of the Blood Shadow Dharma body. Then, Chao Feng's blood-soaked palm slammed into the great Xun'er demon pillar, and a terrifying wave of spiritual energy exploded, sending the pillar flying. Mu Chen's figure rapidly retreated, and with a flick of his sleeve, the great Xun'er demon pillar whistled back and stood tall on the ground. He stood atop it, coldly staring at the massive Blood Shadow Dharma body. Blood explosion technique. Chao Feng's killing intent surged. His blood-soaked palm suddenly shifted into a hand seal, which resembled an eagle's claw. He stretched it out toward Mu Chen. Boom. The wind from his claws howled as the sky seemed to turn blood-red. From a distance, Mu Chen's body stiffened, feeling as though his blood was boiling and on the verge of exploding. Chao Feng's Blood Shadow Dharma body could even trigger an internal explosion of blood from such a distance. This was truly an eerie and terrifying ability. Boom. Mu Chen stamped his foot, and dazzling lightning erupted from his body. He transformed into a being of silver lightning, resembling a thunder god descending. With a mighty punch, he unleashed a roaring thunder, as though hundreds of lightning pythons were roaring past, shattering the blood-red light. Blood Shadow, Chao Feng sneered. Countless blood-colored streaks shot out from his body like shadows flying across the sky, surrounding Mu Chen in a vast web. The blood shadows let out piercing shrieks, with sound waves expanding and assaulting the mind, causing excruciating pain, as if Mu Chen's head were about to explode. Mu Chen furrowed his brow. With a tap of his toes, his body swiftly retreated, the thunderous roar in his ears helping him resist the shrill sound waves. Then, with a sudden surge of power, he unleashed 2 explosive punches. Boom, boom. The thunderous fist imprints, vast and overwhelming, collided with the countless blood shadows. The earth shook with a constant rumble, and with every impact, Mu Chen was sent flying several hundred meters. It was clear to everyone that Mu Chen had been completely pushed into the disadvantage. At 9 Nether Palace, Tang Bing and Tang Ro watched in nervous anticipation, but neither of them spoke. They knew just how terrifying Chao Feng was at this moment. "Now, you're just like a stray dog." Chao Feng sneered coldly, his attacks growing even more ferocious. He then looked at Mu Chen, who was merely retreating, and a murderous intent surged in his eyes to an extreme degree. His hands suddenly formed a strange seal. "Do you think running away will save you? Demonic blood bell, devour heaven and earth." Boom. The world around them instantly darkened, as if the clouds in the sky had turned blood red. Torrential blood rain poured down, engulfing the heavens and earth. Mu Chen stabilized his figure and furrowed his brow slightly. He sensed an unusual fluctuation of spiritual energy in the air. Clearly, Chao Feng was about to unleash his ultimate killing move. It should be about time. Mu Chun muttered to himself, lowering his head, and his palm and his sleeve silently formed the final seal. The space around Mu Chun suddenly turned blood red. Countless blood shadows, like vines, seeped out of the air and quickly coalesced around him. The blood shadows entangled him, and a massive blood bell materialized out of thin air, eerily enveloping Mu Chun. Buzz, buzz. The blood bell stood tall in the sky. Its surface seemed to be covered with countless terrifying faces, and sharp, shrill screams echoed through the sky, causing one's head to ache as if it would explode. As the blood bell appeared and enclosed Mu Chun, the faces of countless onlookers changed, and many secretly shook their heads. Even a second-grade Supreme would be in grave danger if trapped inside such a move. Mu Chun's situation now seemed dire. At Blood Eagle Hall, a faint smile finally appeared on the grim face of the Blood Eagle King. His eyes glinted with cold venom, like a deadly serpent, sending chills down one's spine. Now, what face would the Nine Nether Palace have? Die. In the sky, Chao Feng sneered coldly, his killing intent surging. His seal changed, and the blood bell suddenly shook, erupting in a burst of bloodlight. As long as he triggered the explosion, Mu Chun, trapped within, would undoubtedly die. Demonic blood bell, explode. Boom. The massive blood bell finally exploded. In that instant, it felt as if an endless sea of blood swept outward. The stench of blood filled the air, and the space itself began to fracture, with spatial cracks rapidly spreading. Numerous gazes turned towards the explosion. Tang Bing and Tang Ro, the two sisters, turned pale, their bodies trembling. The 9 Nether guards also looked pale, their expressions grim. Only the 9 Nether remained calm. As the sea of blood flooded the heavens and earth, a sudden burst of light erupted from the blood sea. Wherever the light touched, the blood sea was instantly evaporated, disappearing completely in just a few moments. Chao Feng's expression changed drastically, and he suddenly looked up. Many powerful figures in the world also sensed this change, their eyes widening in shock as they gazed at the distant sky. Soon, their pupils contracted. A colossal light shadow stood quietly in the sky. Behind it, a blazing sun hovered, emitting an endless brilliance. Waves of fiery light surged through the air, causing all the spiritual energy in the heavens and earth to boil and burn. A terrifying spiritual pressure enveloped everything. In the sky, the 3 sovereigns, who had been watching the battle, also had their eyes suddenly widen, their expressions filled with astonishment. The dazzling light flame descended from the horizon, sweeping through the blood-red light like melting snow meeting lava. In an overwhelming display of power, the blood-red light was completely destroyed in the blink of an eye. In just a few moments, the once darkened sky became brilliantly bright. Far in the distance, a giant shadow descended through the air, with a blazing sun behind its head, making for an awe-inspiring sight. Countless people stared, speechless, at the scene. That is Mu Chen's supreme Dharma body. What kind of Dharma body is that? Such fluctuations must not be an ordinary supreme Dharma body, but it doesn't quite resemble the 99th tier supreme Dharma body either. Truly strange. Whispers filled the air, mixed with shock and confusion. It seemed that the mysterious supreme Dharma body had left everyone uncertain about its origin. This supreme Dharmakaya doesn't seem to be among the 99 ranks of supreme Dharmakayas, said the Heavenly Vulture Emperor in surprise. The Spirit Pupil Emperor slightly furrowed his brows and said indifferently, although the 99 ranks of supreme Dharmakayas are authoritative, the heavens and earth are vast and boundless. There are many powerful supreme Dharmakayas that don't fall within those 99 ranks. Moreover, some individuals are born with extraordinary talents and, through certain fortuitous encounters, can cultivate special supreme Dharmakayas. The sleeping king nodded at this, his voice ethereal as he chuckled. That is indeed true. There are countless wonders in the world. The 99 ranks of supreme Dharmakayas do not represent everything. However, while a supreme Dharmakaya is powerful, it ultimately depends on the individual's strength. If the gap is too large, no matter how strong the supreme Dharmakaya is, it cannot make up for the difference. He paused, casting a glance at the 2 opposing supreme Dharmakayas in the sky, and smiled. But looking at it now, This mysterious supreme Dharmakaya will definitely decide the outcome. Although Mu Chun was only a first-grade supreme, his combat power was not weaker than Chao Feng, who had entered the second-grade supreme level. Now that both had summoned their supreme Dharmakayas, with the Sleeping King's keen eyes, he could clearly see that Mu Chun had the absolute upper hand. The Heavenly Vulture Emperor smiled upon hearing this, while the Spirit Pupil Emperor slightly furrowed his brows, but said nothing more. For him, such a level of conflict was not particularly interesting. Although Chao Feng was a subordinate of the Blood Eagle King, if he was so useless, there would be no value in keeping him. If he had to be discarded, then so be it. In the sky, Chao Feng looked in horror at the mysterious giant shadow walking through the air, his heart stirred with immense waves of fear. He could feel the overwhelming pressure emanating from it. Such a level of oppression indicated that Mu Chen's supreme Dharmakaya was undoubtedly far stronger than his blood shadow Dharmakaya. How is this possible? Chao Feng roared in his heart. He knew how rare and precious such a powerful supreme Dharmakaya was. Even after all these years of risking his life for the Bloodhawk Hall, he had only obtained the cultivation method for the Blood Shadow Dharmakaya. Yet, Mu Chun had cultivated a supreme Dharmakaya that was even stronger than his own Blood Shadow Dharmakaya. It must be from Nine Nether. The flames of jealousy surged within Chao Feng's heart. His feelings toward Nine Nether were complex, love mixed with inferiority. The reason he betrayed the Nine Nether Palace was clear to him. He knew he could never be worthy of Nine Nether. That's why he had to fight for it. When he saw that Nine Nether had found someone else to replace him in the Nine Nether Palace, his rage and murderous intent erupted uncontrollably. He wanted to prove to Nine Nether that he was irreplaceable. You think you can defeat me just because of this supreme Dharmakaya? Foolish dream. Chao Feng's eyes glowed with a murderous intent like a tidal wave. He immediately roared and made a series of rapid hand seals. Boom. A monstrous blood light once again engulfed the sky. Huge blood-red beams erupted from the blood shadow Dharmakaya, their viscous hue resembling fresh blood. Blood shadow sword, spirit severing. The blood-like beams of light fused together, forming a massive blood-red sword that was around 100 feet long. Blood flowed down the blade like a river. Whoosh. The blood-red sword twisted and fluctuated like a shadow, emanating an eerie and cold aura. In the next instant, the sword vanished without a trace. Far in the distance, behind Mu Chen's great sun indestructible body, the space suddenly cracked open. A blood light, like a shadow, darted out without causing any disturbance. It aimed directly at the top of the great sun indestructible body's head, poised to strike. However, just as the shadow-like blood sword was about to strike, a massive hand, seemingly ablaze with the great sun flame, reached through the air and grabbed the blood sword. Sizzle! The giant hand squeezed, and the blood sword instantly shattered, the blood exploding and vanishing into nothingness. Whoosh! The countless onlookers gasped in disbelief. No one had expected that Chao Feng's eerie attack would be so easily blocked by Mu Chen's supreme Dharmakaya. Impossible! Chao Feng could not contain his roar. His blood sword was forged from the blood of many powerful beings and spirit beasts, making it as hard as an ordinary divine artifact. Mu Chun, transformed into the great sun indestructible body, had a burning light flickering in his eyes, filled with a cold, indifferent expression. He gazed at Chao Feng, and his look was as if he were looking down on an insignificant ant. After activating the great sun indestructible body, Mu Chun could feel the immense power surging within him, far surpassing Chao Feng's current strength. After all, the great sun indestructible body was one of the foundational divine bodies of the eternal undying body, and its terrifying power was beyond what ordinary people could fathom. Boom. Mu Chen's gaze remained indifferent as his massive hand clenched tightly, and he punched forward. A blinding light erupted, and a fist imprint, resembling the blazing sun, shot out with a fierce roar, tearing through the space before appearing right in front of Chao Feng, then crashing down mercilessly. Faced with this thunderous attack, Chao Feng barely had time to cross his arms in front of him for defense. Then, he felt an overwhelming force explode from his arms. Boom! A deep, resonant sound echoed through the sky as the enormous blood shadow Dharma body was sent staggering backward with every step. Each step left a deep imprint on the ground below. Boom. The blood shadow Dharma body stomped down fiercely, causing the earth to crack open, finally stabilizing his form. Qiao Feng's eyes, filled with fierce hatred and rage, were fixed on Mu Chen. His retreating posture only intensified the murderous intent in his heart. I must kill him, the roar echoed in Qiao Feng's mind. He could not accept being defeated by Mu Chen. After all these years of pursuing power, even willing to betray, if he failed here, what would be the value of everything he had sacrificed? Thus, he had to kill Mu Chen. Qiao Feng's eyes turned blood red as he suddenly raised his arms. Crimson spiritual energy surged from his palms like a tidal wave. But this time, blood was flowing into the energy, coming directly from within Qiao Feng's own body. Splash! A viscous sound filled the air as a massive blood-red sphere, about 100 meters in size, rapidly formed between the palms of the blood-shadowed Dharma body. The sphere's surface twisted and squirmed, with blood spikes extending out and retracting again. An incredibly violent, savage aura silently spread across the land. On the great Luo Gold Terrace, Su Qing, Zhou Yu, and the others, who had been watching, became solemn. They couldn't help but slightly change expressions as they saw the blood-red orb in Qiao Feng's palms. This guy is crazy, they muttered, sensing that Qiao Feng had drawn out all the blood from his body. He was clearly intent on killing Mu Chen, wanting to wipe him out completely. However, the cost was immense. Even if he won, he would need at least half a year to recover fully. At the Nine Nether Palace, Tang Bing, Tang Rou, and the others were gripping their hands tightly, their faces filled with tension. Even Nine Nether Liu's brows were slightly furrowed, her face cold as ice. It was clear that she had underestimated Qiao Feng's murderous intent toward Mu Chen. Her slender figure straightened as she gathered her energy, ready to act the moment Mu Chen was in danger. Demonic blood sphere. Qiao Feng's roar echoed in the sky as an explosive burst of blood-red light filled the air. The massive blood sphere transformed into a crimson light arc and shot toward Mu Chen with the speed of lightning. Wherever the blood-red sphere passed, the space cracked, and the ground below was torn apart, leaving a deep, abyss-like scar. Mu Chen watched the incoming demonic blood sphere, an attack of such terrifying speed, yet he did not attempt to evade. His massive hand slowly closed into a fist. Then let me show you the true power of the great sun indestructible body. A murmur echoed in Mu Chen's heart. His eyes suddenly became sharp, and boundless light erupted from his palm. Within his hand, a radiant sun seemed to flicker faintly. Great Sun Palm. A deep voice rang out from within Mu Chen's heart. The giant palm, seemingly holding the power of a sun, slammed forward, directly piercing through space and fearlessly colliding with the blood-red sphere containing all the blood from Qiao Feng's body. Boom. When the two forces collided, light engulfed the entire world, and countless onlookers widened their eyes. In this life-or-death battle, who would prevail? Everyone in the world looked up at the sky, where the murderous intent spread thickly. It was the killing intent from the two kings. In the sky above, the Nine Nether King and the Blood Eagle King were locked in a fierce standoff, their eyes cold as ice. Their feud had lasted for years, neither of them able to stand the other. If they weren't both kings in the great Luo Heaven domain, they might have already engaged in a bloody battle. But judging by the current tension, it seemed both were barely able to suppress their killing intent. I've long wanted to experience the might of the Nine Nether Sparrow clan. Today, I'm truly eager to witness it, said the Blood Eagle King in a grim voice, a brutal glint flashing in his blood-red eyes. As he spoke, a blood-red storm erupted around him, swirling violently. Within the storm, a vast and ferocious wave of spiritual energy surged, cutting through the air like blades, wreaking havoc across the sky. Then come and try. The Nine Nether King responded with a cold smile. Purple flames erupted around him, expanding rapidly, and his long hair whipped through the flames. A terrifying heat spread through the air. The crowd couldn't help but change their expressions at the sight of the two. If the Nine Nether King and Blood Eagle King truly clashed, the consequences would be far more catastrophic than any usual dispute between leaders. Leaders at the highest level were not considered the backbone of the great Luo Heaven domain. But figures like the Nine Nether King and the Blood Eagle King, with their immense strength, were the true pillars of power. Enough! At that moment, a voice rang out, cutting through the tension. A gentle yet forceful wave of energy swept through the area, and the wild spiritual power surrounding the Nine Nether King and the Blood Eagle King was instantly suppressed, forcing them back into their bodies. Everyone turned to look in the direction of the voice and saw the Heavenly Vulture Emperor frowning slightly, his gaze fixed on the two. He spoke in a low voice. "Did you both forget the rules of the Great Luo Heaven Domain? In the Great Luo Heaven Domain, factions were not allowed to directly engage in battle. The kings could only allow their subordinates to fight, maintaining competition while preserving their own status. The Blood Eagle King, seeing the Heavenly Vulture Emperor intervene, knew that he could no longer confront the Nine Nether King. His gaze turned cold as he glanced at the nearly defeated Chao Feng, but the anger in his heart was still unrelenting. He turned to Mu Chun and said with a chilling tone, "Chao Feng has been defeated, yet Mu Chun is still so ruthless. I believe his qualifications should be stripped away." Mu Chun's eyes turned cold upon hearing this. "Dream on," the Nine Nether King sneered. "Blood Eagle King, have you lost your mind? As long as no one admits defeat, the battle will continue. Even if Chao Feng is heavily injured or even killed, it is his own fault. You can't blame anyone else. Then do you expect me to let this go in the Bloodhawk Hall? That's impossible." The Blood Eagle King shot back, not backing down. The Heavenly Vulture Emperor, seeing the heated exchange, furrowed his brow, while the Spirit Pupil Emperor simply smiled and said faintly, "Why don't we temporarily remove Mu Chun from the situation to calm the Blood Eagle King's anger? Later, we can find an opportunity to compensate him." Mu Chun's expression changed slightly. His goal was the Great Luo Golden Pool, and he had come this far. He could not easily give up now. As for the so-called future compensation, it was something he couldn't trust. Though anger simmered inside him, Mu Chun didn't act impulsively. His position in the Great Luo Heaven Domain was too low for him to stir up unnecessary trouble on a whim and bring problems to the Nine Nether King. The Heavenly Vulture Emperor frowned. "If we do this, who would dare to join the competition for the Great Luo Golden Pool in the future? Do you think there are few people wanting to enter the Great Luo Golden Pool?" The Spirit Pupil Emperor smiled. Hearing their argument, the normally silent Sleeping King suddenly smiled faintly and said, "The old rules. Let it continue." Both the Heavenly Vulture Emperor and the Spirit Pupil Emperor were taken aback. Over the years, the Sleeping King had rarely intervened in their disputes. For him to speak up now was quite rare. Moreover, his words clearly favored Mu Chun. The Spirit Pupil Emperor's eyes darkened slightly, but as one of the three sovereigns, he knew the Sleeping King's deep strength and, most importantly, that the Sleeping King was always the most trusted person by the Domain Master. Once the Sleeping King spoke, it was hard to oppose him. He smiled and said, "Since Dream Brother has spoken, let's continue according to the rules." The Blood Eagle King's face darkened, but he didn't dare to say more. With a cold snort, he flicked his sleeve and flew off the sky. The Nine Nether King glanced at the Sleeping King in surprise, gave a nod of thanks, then turned to Mu Chun and smiled. "You did well." Mu Chun smiled and nodded. Seeing this, the Nine Nether made no further remarks and turned to leave swiftly. Mu Chun watched the graceful figure of the Nine Nether as it disappeared, then turned his head, cupped his fists respectfully toward the Heavenly Vulture Emperor and the Sleeping King. With a slight motion, he moved toward the Great Luo Golden Terrace. On the Great Luo Golden Terrace, several figures fixed their gazes intently on Mu Chun's descending form. In Su Qing and Zhou Yu's eyes, there was a hint of astonishment. The strength Mu Chun had displayed earlier clearly surprised them. Although they were stronger than Chao Feng, the latter could still be a considerable threat if he fought to the death. Mu Chun, however, had been able to withstand him. That alone was enough for Su Qing and the others to place Mu Chun on equal footing with them. As Mu Chun landed on the Great Luo Golden Terrace, a violent surge of spiritual energy erupted nearby. A figure was sent hurtling backward, skimming the ground as it retreated in a hurry. Mu Chun appeared behind the figure and placed a hand on their shoulder, helping to dissipate the force. The figure turned around to reveal Fong Lei. Seeing Mu Chun, he forced a pale smile. Earlier, During Mu Chen's battle with Chao Feng, Feng Lei had also engaged with Wu Tian, but clearly, he had lost in the end. In front, light and shadow gathered, and Wu Tian emerged. His eyes, somewhat dark, were fixed on Mu Chen. However, this time, there was a trace of wariness in the depths of his gaze. Although he had been battling with Feng Lei earlier, Wu Tian had clearly been watching Chao Feng's situation, and Mu Chen's astonishing combat power had left him shaken. Wu Tian wasn't a fool, or else he wouldn't have earned the Blood Eagle King's favor as a commander. So now, he had fully reined in his earlier underestimation of Mu Chen, recognizing him as a worthy rival. I lost, brother Mu Chen. I hope you'll gain something from the great Luo Golden Pool, Feng Lei said straightforwardly, offering Mu Chen a smile before stepping away from the great Luo Golden Terrace. Although he wasn't pleased with Wu Tian, Feng Lei understood that his loss to the latter was simply due to lacking skill. Therefore, he didn't rashly ask Mu Chen for help. Mu Chen watched Feng Lei leave, then calmly returned to his previous position. Although he wasn't fond of Wu Tian, he understood that now was not the right time to act. He had already expended much spiritual energy fighting Chao Feng, and his current condition wasn't ideal. There was no need to take further risks, especially since the 4 spots had already been decided. Wu Tian also refrained from mocking Mu Chen again, instead walking back with a gloomy expression. Originally, he had planned to challenge Zhou Yu in this opportunity to improve his ranking, but Mu Chen's sudden emergence had thrown a wrench into those plans. Now, he dared not act recklessly for fear that Mu Chen might take advantage. The 4 stood silently at the 4 corners of the great Luo Golden Terrace, each lost in thought, avoiding any conflict. Countless gazes were fixed on the 4 figures atop the great Luo Golden Terrace, and there was a sense of admiration in the air. Everyone knew that these 4 were the leading figures of the great Luo Heavenly Domain, and aside from Mu Chen, the other 3 were seasoned veterans. As the atmosphere on the great Luo Golden Terrace settled, the Heavenly Vulture Emperor exchanged a glance with the others. His ancient, deep voice soon rang out across the vast expanse. The final 4 spots for the great Luo Golden Pool have been determined. Now, accept the Golden Talisman. Azura Hall, Su Qing. Upon hearing the Heavenly Vulture Emperor's call, Su Qing stepped forward calmly. A golden light descended from the sky and transformed into a golden talisman, which landed in Su Qing's hand. Mountain Splitting Palace, Zhou Yu. Blood Eagle Hall, Wu Tian. The 2 also stepped forward, and golden light enveloped them as the golden talismans fell. The Heavenly Vulture Emperor's gaze turned to Mu Chen, and a faint smile seemed to appear on his ancient face. 9 Nether Palace, Mu Chen. Mu Chen stepped forward. The golden light converged and formed a golden talisman in his palm. Inside the talisman, there seemed to be a strange fluctuation, and the source of this power seemed to be atop the mountain peak, the location of the great Luo Golden Pool. From now on, these 4 will be the new rulers of our great Luo Heavenly Domain. As the Heavenly Vulture Emperor's voice fell, a deafening cheer erupted from all directions. Regardless of how they felt, it was clear that the 4 before them were among the best of the young generation in the great Luo Heavenly Domain. The Heavenly Vulture Emperor heard the cheers and gave a faint smile. His gaze then shifted toward the peak of Golden Pool Peak, where golden light continued to pour down incessantly. However, this time, all the torrents of golden light circled around the 4 of them, Mu Chen and the others, who were holding the golden talisman. Now ascend to the peak. With a wave of his hand, the Heavenly Vulture Emperor spoke, and in an instant, the eyes of Mu Chen and his companions burned with fervor. They stomped their feet with force, and their figures shot up, breaking through the golden light torrents amid the countless envious gazes, transforming into streaks of rainbow light as they surged toward the towering peak of the Golden Pool.